All right, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Embracing Ourselves and Our Talents Lightning Talk. I hope you all are enjoying your day so far. I am Lauren Kaiser, and I lead project management for operations at Toyota Research Institute, where we are developing automated driving, robotics, and other human amplification. I'm an officer in TRI's Women and Allies group, and I have loved getting to know other women in tech through volunteering in WT Squared Planning Committee. I am thrilled to kick off today's session. As part of the Emerging Leadership Committee, we saw so many wonderful submissions and found it really hard to choose just one. Seeing a common theme, we got creative and decided to bring you 6 talks in lightning rounds with a host also well-versed on the topic. I am delighted to have the opportunity to introduce to you all our host and facilitator of this special event, Alana Karen. Alana brings with her 18 and a half years of experience at Google, experiencing firsthand the evolution and growth of the company. She has held multiple director positions over her tenure, and she is currently Director of Search Platforms. As Alana would say, the only thing constant is change. Alana has had the opportunity to host similar lightning style events and is also a frequent speaker at conferences and summits, striving always to build community and make sure people know they are not alone. Want to see more from Alana? Keep an eye out for Adventures of Women in Tech, her book that will be released later this year. Without further ado, please welcome Alana Karen.
Hello, thank you. So thank you for joining us today for Lightning Talks, all contemplating how we embrace ourselves and our talents. Putting together this series months ago, we'd already each faced and shared unique obstacles as we journeyed through our careers. And then these recent months have shed further light on the ways we'll be challenged and we must rise. We have 6 different speakers for you today, each ruminating on these themes. How do we lift ourselves up when we're discouraged or rise against the odds? How do we manage our insecurities as individuals and as leaders? And how do we accept and embrace ourselves? Thank you to Anita, Kavita, Meriem, Peipei, Jennifer, and Sharon for sharing their perspectives today. In reading their bios, I feel so privileged to hear about their experiences, their stories. Their experience runs the gamut from engineering to program management, to marketing, to strategy, and even running their own businesses. Across these fields, they come to us with their observations, their aha moments, and their takeaways building their careers in this industry. Their full bios are in the program. Some of our presenters today are leveraging a creative form of storytelling where a presenter shows 20 slides, usually image-based, for 20 seconds of commentary each, and it moves forward for just auto forwards for 6 minutes and 40 seconds total. So some are doing that, some aren't, so you'll see some variety. Regardless of the format, we will save questions to the end. And so please use your Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen for that. Thank you again for joining us today. Our first speaker is Anita Jindal, speaking on grit and persistence, key attributes for advancement.
I would like to share with you my personal stories on grit and persistence. These 2 attributes helped me with my career journey and shaped me into a person that I am today. I was born at Delhi, India, as the youngest of 4 daughters. I attribute the learning of my life skills and communication to my mother, and the passion for my field to my father. Both my parents defied the norms of Indian society to give us the best education. Growing up in India, I was always fascinated by computers. When a new master's program was introduced in India, My parents encouraged my study into computer science, including my journey across the world to further my growth. I joined PhD in US. The system was entirely new to me. There were naysayers who tried to pull me down. Qualifier is hard to pass. Why don't you just take masters and be done with it? All these comments brought in the feeling of fear of failure. However, I persisted, kept focus on my goals, and earned my PhD. During my first job, I did not ask for a raise. After 3 years, I got a minuscule raise of 2% after being flagged in the HR system. I lost the opportunity for leading my own project. It was given to a person who did not know anything about the project. That taught me an important lesson of expressing intent irrespective of the outcome. When I returned from maternity leave, I had to reestablish myself because my original projects were canceled. I still remember I did not get an opportunity because a hiring manager assumed that I will not be able to accommodate 10% travel with a new baby. I was still persistent and did not give up on my goal of being an engineer. Being the only female engineer on the team, I built relationships with my colleagues. In the process, they grew to learn about my strengths. One of my colleagues, whose team was constantly missing deadlines, kept contacting me and persuaded me to join his team. Few months after joining his team, I turned his project around and changed the stakeholder perception. My management team saw my influencing and collaboration skills and offered me a management job. I was an engineer at heart. I knew nothing about management. However, I saw this as an opportunity to go beyond my technical skills. Move into the management opened a whole new world of new essential skills for me, including strategy, looking at the bigger picture, leading and building teams, and execution. As a new manager for a brand new team, I was given a very strategic project to be done within a bound time frame. This wasn't done before, and this was a brand new area. I took the responsibility and led my team to deliver the first web services standard for Sun. And that particular experience shaped my character and my grit into going into uncharted territories. I did have my journey, some setbacks into my journey. It wasn't completely linear. Although on a succession path, my VP did not promote me to a director role. He brought in an individual contributor from marketing to run engineering. I was disappointed, but I focused on my goals and my objectives. Any disappointment and discouragement made me much stronger and increased my will to go achieve my objectives. One of the very important things for me is continuous learning. Since industry is changing at a fast rate, we have to continually learn and keep up with the pace. During my career also, I have learned continually. I have gone from learning core bar web services, multiple technologies to big data. And this has enabled me to lead my teams into delivering innovative customer products. I also believe in personal growth. Based on feedback from one of my managers on communication skills, I joined Toastmasters. Toastmasters boosted my self-confidence in going and expressing and sharing my experiences through different channels and different presentations. During my career journey, I had a lot of support from my colleagues and my family to pursue my dreams. I also learned from each and every experience. I always look for opportunities where I can share my experiences as well as mentor others so that they do not have to learn it the hard way. I also want to indicate that due to my passion, tenacity, and use of technology in delivering innovative products, I was recently nominated and received 2 industry awards. Timmy Awards for being the best technical manager and IDG wants to watch Award 2020, which is spotlights the rising technologies. I had success on the home front also. I had a very supportive husband and family, and I'm proud of my two sons who are currently pursuing PhD at Stanford and MIT. Often, as women, we are faced with situations where we do not know the end result or the outcome. Unless we take risks and explore, we lose the opportunity to learn and grow. I also believe that any setback or any disappointment should make us stronger and increase our will to achieve our objectives. When I started my career journey, there were not many women in technology firms for us to learn from. Women experimented and forged their own paths. In my case, grit and persistence were the two main attributes which really helped my career journey. I encourage you to discover the attributes which are more important for your success. I would encourage you to have fun and make wonderful memories along the way. Thank you. I would now like to introduce our next speaker, Kavita Ryali.
Thank you, Anita. That was very inspiring indeed. Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? See my screen? Okay. So I'll be presenting on the topic Rising Against the Odds, Climbing the Corporate Ladder. I want to start with a quote by Maya Angelou. One must encounter defeats, never give up, because it's in the rising that you discover who you truly are. And it's in the why, in what skills that make you rise, and that's the why factor. My presentation will be in 3 steps: learn, engage, and inspire. In the learn step, I want to share what are the adverse situations that people face, what studies tell us, and what soft skills matter. In the engage step, I want to share stories of multiple women and their powerful experiences in life and career stages who have friends, family, and inspiring acquaintances. How did they rise despite all odds? And finally, in the inspire step, I want to share the why factor. Based on the survey that I did with all these women, what are some of the top 5 soft skills that emerged? What are your key takeaways? And how can you grow and inspire others? So what are these adverse situations that we face in personal and professional fronts? There is a myriad of these. And what does it do to us? It creates depression, anxiety, loneliness, and stress. There was a study that was done by Gallup, and it showed that year over year, this affects our growth and engagement, both in our professional and personal lives. Today, we have 75% feel worried about COVID-19 effects, and more than half are women. However, with the right support, 21% can be more productive and more engaged. So, another study says that over the period of 38 years, it was the why factor, the soft skill that mattered, that bridged the gap between men and women. And that's the why factor. So moving on to the engage step, this is my story. I'm a single mom of a 14-year-old boy, and I was divorced 5 years back. I had my share of depression, anxiety, and I had gained 40 pounds. Of course, work-related issues as well. My rising was accept the situation, be brave, don't have the victim mentality, choose love over fear, and support. Take the support of women and men as powerful allies for your growth. So here's the story of Apeksha, who was looking to get to be promoted to a principal level. She was having a lot of conflicts with her teams. And her rising was get to crucial conversations, be empathetic, and have a growth mindset. Daisy, she was being stereotyped. She was trying to fit in. Her rising was be authentic and have self-confidence. Here's Holly. She was facing adverse situations early career and mid-career. She had the wrong job to begin with. Her rising was don't be afraid to change if you're in the wrong career. love what you do and do what you love. Julie, she was being micromanaged. She became a yes person. She had the fear of losing her job. Later, she had a younger, smarter reportee, and that made her feel insecure. Her rising, befriend someone who's younger, be generous, not territorial, and mentor them. Denise, she is a CEO and a woman entrepreneur in the Silicon Valley. She swims with the sharks daily, and she's a woman of color. Her rising was inspiration, getting inspired from the rich heritage of powerful women, including her queen mother. She plans a legacy that anticipates 5 steps forward, and she plans 5 to 10 years ahead instead of looking back. There's another leader who faced managerial problems, and her manager had total disregard for work-life balance. Her rising was know when to quit, move on. Nishita, she's a brown woman and had to lead a product where type A aggressive people were there. Her rising was don't be a quitter and have an iron fist and tight velvet gloves. And she is a CTO. She is in the CTO office. Faced many hardships, and she had to lead a product. There was a task for reduction of almost 70,000 people. Her rising was have the courage to push forward. Prakashini, who's a UN diplomat for South Africa, faced a lot of challenges in a very male-dominated domain. Her rising was challenge the status quo, build trust to disarm fears from others. Gilda, she's a Latino woman in a very male-dominated environment. She had to work. Rising, find mentors and allies and life coaches. Daria was in a completely foreign country, and she said her rising was build resilience and say no to something that doesn't agree with your core values. Merlin took support from multiple people, managers, mom groups, etc. Mona's rising was believe in your own strengths and embrace talent. And Melissa, a lot of illnesses, 5 surgeries. She took control of the situation because she wanted to thrive ahead. So what is the why factor? What are the soft skills that made these women rise? So based on the survey that I did with them, there are 5 top soft skills that emerged. Self-management and authenticity, lead by example, be accountable, complex problem solving, getting support and collaborate, risk-taking. So that's the why factor. And here are my key takeaways for you in terms of my recommendations. Develop your why factor, grow your soft skills, build a network inside and outside your company. Take control. Don't wait for your HR manager, but just take charge. Soft skills are not easy to learn. They are learned by practice, and get help from your mentors, friends to practice. Leverage online learning and coaching platforms like LinkedIn Learning, Smart Habit, and leverage newer AI-enabled platforms like Numbly to build your soft skills and network. And with that, I want to say a big thank you to all the organizers, and I will hand it off to Meriem. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kavita. Hi, everyone. My name is Meriem, and I wanted to start by asking you all a question. Have you ever been in a work environment and thought, I don't really fit in here. I definitely am not qualified enough for this, and it's only a matter of time before everybody else realizes this and they kick me out? I can't see any of you right now, but I know that some of you are nodding, and you're not alone. It's estimated that 70% of people, that's 2 in 3 people, have these unfounded thoughts, widely known as imposter syndrome. And for a variety of reasons that disproportionately impact women and underrepresented minorities, from our upbringings and environments to traumas and rejection. What we do know is that the impact can be really significant to us personally and to our organizations, from acting out of alignment with our values, making bad decisions, and sometimes even worse, making no decisions at all and getting stuck. I've experienced a lot of self-doubt in my career. Even when I first saw my name published on an academic paper with leading institutions, or when I worked for President Carter and designed negotiations with the UN, or even more recently, presenting main stage at national tech conferences. No matter how much work and preparation I would put into these things, I couldn't help but shake the feeling that I was inadequate and didn't deserve to have a voice in these spaces. So, over time, I developed a framework or a toolbox to help me manage. The toolbox includes 4 strategies: love, learn, lead, and let go. Depending on the context, one strategy might work better than the other, but what they all have in common is that these are things that are within your realm of control. I do have a disclaimer though. These are not easy things to do. Do not let the alliteration fool you. They take time, so I encourage you to practice space, practice grace with yourself as you're practicing all of these strategies. So let's start with love. One of the most effective and sustainable ways of combating a low self-esteem is to consistently invest in self-love. So I'll be spending a little bit more time on this one than on the other strategies. I know that some people feel like talking about self-love is awkward or corny or out of touch. I know this because I used to be some people, but I realized that self-love is not this magical Disney feeling. It's an intention and an action that can really help build resiliency over time. There are many, many avenues for practicing self-love, and what I'll share today are what for me are the 4 foundations. And within 2 to 3 days of practicing these things, I start to see a meaningful shift in my mood and levels of motivation. First, eating well. So think of food that's gonna energize your mind, body, and soul. Next, getting enough sleep. And I know this is so hard, but it's recommended that adults between 26 and 64 get 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Next is moving your body, and you don't have to be pumping iron every day, but 20 minutes of stretching, walking, or dance, which I love to do, can go a really long way. And finally, connection. This is one of the most important things to us as humans, and we see that especially now with the global pandemic. So be very intentional about who you choose to invest your time and energy with. And specifically for combating imposter syndrome, check that you have people around you that can practice radical candor with you. That means people who really care about you, but can also give you honest and direct feedback. The next strategy is learning. And I can't think of a better phrase to summarize this than to trust and appreciate your struggle. That is, invest in the process equally, if not more, than in the end result. And if you're experiencing self-doubt or insecurity, chances are you've stepped outside of your comfort zone and you're doing something that challenges you. And so I'd like to challenge you. Rather than fixate on that end result and what everybody else is going to see, focus on all of that hard work that you're putting in below the surface, and that can really help shift your perspective. Next is leading. And this might feel counterintuitive or a little bit uncomfortable, but I encourage you as leaders to be honest with yourself and especially with others about your rejections and your failures and what you learned from those things. This is particularly important if you are in a position of power, privilege, or influence. Being a vulnerable leader takes a ton of courage. I don't want to minimize that, but it can go a really, really long way in mitigating imposter syndrome and also creating a sense of belonging for those around you. And if you need some inspiration, there's this awesome global movement that was founded out of Mexico. Happy Cinco de Mayo. I did not plan that, but it's an excellent organization that encourages people to hashtag share the failure and help break free from some of those limiting paradigms. Fourth and finally is letting go. With all of that said, sometimes a space or an environment or a person will not recognize your worth, and even worse, deliberately put you down. This strategy is recognition of that and, frankly, permission to let go of toxic spaces and people, and sometimes even the expectations that you might have had of yourself. This can be really hard to do, and honestly, it's one of the strategies that I struggle with most. It can feel like failure, it can be really uncomfortable, or the cost of change can just seem and be really high. But if you are in an environment that is undervaluing you, I encourage you to start putting together an action plan. That can look like building healthy boundaries, or starting to save and building up your savings account, or reaching out to your network to look for a new job. Because in the end, your value is not tied to your productivity or what other people think of you, and especially not to your job. You are here, you are on this journey, and that is enough. But sometimes it can be really hard to remember and realize that. And so I hope that these strategies, love, learn, lead, and let go, can help you internalize your sense of worthiness and create spaces for others to do the same. Excellent. And with that, I will pass it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Meriem. All right, here we go. Let me actually. So hello, I am Jennifer. I'm founder and principal of Manifest Advisors, and we are going to be talking about the power of your juice and your professional brand is juicy. So the world will ask you who you are, and professional branding is owning that story. What do you stand for? What is your, what are your values, your special sauce, your juice? Why this is important. So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about Lionel. He's outside of my house. Somebody just is putting up amazing, funny signs. So there's gonna be a lot of levity throughout this presentation because I feel like that's needed right now. But he's asking you, like, who are you? Why it's important. So outside of your professional brand being defined for you, the stronger your brand, the more people wanna work with you. The more people wanna work with you, the more in demand you are. And the more in demand you are, the more you can ask for what you want, AKA standing in your power. So how do we do that? I would say start here, cultivating that juice. So this came actually from a Janelle Monáe song, I've Got the Juice. I love her, she is brilliant, she is amazing. I hope everyone as homework after today, just like distills all of the goodness, like Miriam's talk that we just had, and listens to that song because, she says, you've got that juice, now squeeze all that passion fruit, ain't no one fresher than you. And that is truth. Like there is no one else as fresh as you, even in pandemic when we're not showering and everything else, it's good. Okay, so you're cultivating that juice. How do you do it? A lot of folks know what an MVP is and don't know what a UVP is. And a UVP is your unique value proposition. As my friend and professor David Kim says, that is the uniquely gifted thing that enables you to bring good to the world. So how much, when was the last time you sat with that or defined it? Really thought about, well, what is the thing I'm uniquely gifted at? So outside of also defining it, thinking about it monthly, quarterly, daily, you do you, but it's very important to define. So then once you've done that, I challenge you to befriend your juicy vision. So this is cheesy and I'm all about it. So you'll notice that I didn't say set your juicy vision because you're probably gonna lose touch. You're gonna need to revisit it a lot. And it's not just what you want to accomplish, your goals, your OKRs, your KPIs, your BRBs, LOLs, etc., whatever acronym. Who do you want to be? What do you want to build? Who do you want to build those things with, right? Like, what are the communities you want to work with? What is the income, that max and the minimum? Really, I know it's hard and trickier to think about these things, especially in economic collapses and pandemics. But actually, it's a really great time to get that clarity because I think a lot of times we accept what's in front of us and make it work, which, by the way, is an enormous value. I'm also a single parent, and I raised my child 100% on my own in the Bay Area, which is no small thing. I wish it could be, on my LinkedIn. And I understand, right, the value of that, but I'm constantly challenging myself to think bigger and bolder and with greater clarity. This is actually my daughter, and throughout the presentation, this is all of her artwork, aside from one, so shout out to Maya. Okay, so you need to also keep it fresh. This is that sharpening the saw Stephen Covey idea as well. You need to preserve and enhance your greatest asset, which is you, like hands down. Take care of yourself and your personal growth. And it's not just self-care, it's the constant growth and learning. It's setting boundaries. It's having humility and patience and compassion for yourself. I had some compassion for myself recently when I know you all out there are doing your sourdough starter sets and everything. This is me attempting to bake. It was a fail. I did not get a quarantine gold star, but I'm okay with that because you have to start somewhere. All right, so y'all know the fake it till you make it adage. I would challenge you to fake it until you believe it, because if you don't believe it, it is that much harder. It's kind of, as an example, what does this look like in a professional setting? It's a version of dressing for the job that you want. You want to say you want to change industries. What I've done in the past is, first of all, I just decided that I was going to belong there. Like I'm going to make a claim. I'm going to figure out the jargon that they're using, right? Like who are the thought leaders? How are they speaking about their work? I also would reach out to them. People love to talk about themselves. So, have the courage to reach out to the thought leaders and just start to believe in what it is that you're, like how you're trying to get there. So this is ridiculous. I told you the thing about levity. I actually found this recently. I needed some joy during pandemicing the verb. And this is a creepy glamour shot from back in the day. But it's an example I want to tell you about faking it until you believe it. So I was in flux. I wasn't really sure what to do next career-wise. And I was asked to do some business strategy for a company, and they mentioned South by Southwest, and I had never been. I really had no business going, but I helped them out, and woefully underbid a proposal. That's for another conversation. But I was asked to support their on-site launch, and I bought a ticket, not to South by, but just to the conference to see like what could shake out. I made business cards. They were mixed tapes, right? One was Badass Ladies Mix, one was 90s hip hop for the win, and the other was slow jams. But I just decided that I was somebody, and I was going to hand out these business cards and talk with folks, and it was frankly very uncomfortable. I think we all need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, especially when you're growing and changing. I think also we have this idea that so many folks have, everything figured out, and obviously, a little secret, nobody does. We're all doing our best and just showing up again and again. Long story short, not only did I attend South by Southwest, I ended up a week prior to working with this client, getting asked to present as a featured speaker, mentor, and a year later, I was asked to serve on the advisory council and MC for a pitch competition, and I started my own company from sparks at the conference. And now I'm working with professionals and businesses around the world on scaling their companies and careers at Manifest. So I definitely was faking it till I make it, and also, still working on the believing part, but that's the work, right? This is ridiculous, but squeezing the juice. What does this mean? You've cultivated your juice, you've defined your UVP, you've befriended your vision, you faked it until you believed it, and now I invite you to share it. So much of us are doing incredible things, and we keep it very close, right? And in so doing, you don't allow for others to hear your voice and then feel the permission to share as well. So yeah, champion it. This is a pug riding a narwhal. I have no idea who the artist is, by the way, here. I wish I did. Somebody had given this to me, but you know, look how fierce that pug is. Own it, champion it, don't qualify it. Submit for talks like this, right? Why not you? You know, share your idea in the meeting, apply for the job, and you might not get all of the things, but the idea, again, is to step into your power, be visible, be fearless, and be juicy. And I'll stop with this. This is some artwork by Lisa Congdon. And, you know, we're in flux right now, right, collectively. And confidence is easier when life is certain. But, you know, all of us have to dig in and remember, you know, who we are, all that we've seen and survived and contributed to. I also like this show up because, you know, the wee mouse is showing up super fiercely, but it, you know, there's a lot of folks that are helping this mouse to get there. Change is a grind. It's not cataclysmic. It's a continued steady effort towards excellence. So keep showing up. That's, yeah, so I'm going, my name is Jennifer. Again, please reach out to me if I can support you in any way. And I will pass this along actually to Peipei, who is going to make it weird in the best way.
All right, can you guys all see? All right. Let me just make sure everything's good. All right, so I'm going to start. Hi, I'm Peipei Yu, and I'm Senior Director of Engineering Strategy and Operations at Box. And today I'm going to talk about why weirdos rule the world, or really how my unusual career path has shown me that, you know, having a different perspective is really invaluable, especially in tech. I hope the story of my unusual career path can help you on yours. So let's start with the origins of weird. So next up is a picture of me in the 80s when I figured out I was a complete weirdo. We didn't have cell phones back then, so just bear with me. The resolution may not be super high. Actually, that's a hand drawing, and this whole presentation is going to be done in cartoons because I just find that fun, and I also love drawing. So here I am. If you look at me back in the day, I don't think anyone would have said, well, that kid is going places. You know, that kid seems bound for the executive path. You know, I immigrated here from the United States from Taiwan at an early age. I was raised by a single mom, and I was an awkward kid with big, messy hair. And I was really the only person that I knew that was in my situation in my community. None of us spoke the language or understood the culture, and we landed in Southern California. And everyone I remembered in Southern California when I got there was so shiny. And I just looked at them and thought, oh, I'm a Peipei, and I'm clearly not a Kelly or Jennifer or Jessica. I mean, everyone was nice to me, but one of these things is not like the other. Luckily, I found my nerd crew. But even within that crew, I always felt a little bit like I was weird and different. And a lot of that was because a lot of my friends knew what they wanted to be when they grew up because they were nerds. They wanted to be a lawyer, a doctor, a scientist. And for me, I really didn't know what I wanted to be. And I felt like committing to that one thing seemed so confining. And if I had to pick a thing, I think I would spend a lifetime doing all the things and doing new things and really just doing all these things that gave me experiences that I wanted. And I just never wanted to be bored. Regardless, I had lots of angst as a young child, wondering, am I supposed to pick a path to be thing one or thing two? Well, without a defined path towards a defined identity, I felt pretty untethered, kind of lost in space, if you will. I didn't belong to any planet. So I didn't know really what to do. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to learn tangible skills and I'm going to solve problems I'm interested in, keep moving, keep learning, and keep finding cool problems. I decided to get a degree in architecture because it was very interdisciplinary. I liked that the field had to combine, you have to combine art, law, history, and structural engineering, and you have to create special places for people within the constraints of the real world. And in architecture school, I even started a student journal where I really talked about the place of history and ethnography and sociology in architecture. And I love being a historian, a writer, a sociologist amongst the designers. Through my architectural history minor, which I also got, I became very interested in land use policy and law, and I decided to go into nonprofit and public service as a congressional aide. And when I was there, I worked on affordable housing, environmental and transportation policy, and I also joined the board of the National Women's Political Caucus because I was really interested in getting more women into elected office. And it was also during this time, if you look at the years, you'll know that it's a dot-com kind of bust, right? The recession was happening and there was lots of new things happening in the world. And I became very interested in internet law, specifically how do you deal with new legal and policy problems that arise from the quickly evolving internet. A Google executive I had met at the National Women's Political Caucus asked me if I wanted to join her team and work on this very question. To be honest, the role on the team seemed very open-ended and unclear. I also never pictured myself working in corporate America, but I thought the problem seemed really important to the world and also really hard to solve. So I really wanted to step up to the challenge, and I thought, I'm totally in. So I joined Google, and it was a very small team trying to figure out internet policies for what's allowed and not allowed online. And it was a role that also required me to know law, history, ethics, and technology. It was all the things that I had just really learned and spent my time just really understanding. So my 10 years at Google were so amazing. I got to solve problems all the time, and I got to solve new problems. And it seemed that my job kept evolving just like the internet was evolving. And I went from a 2-person team to eventually running a global team of about 70 people. And over time, the work that my colleagues and I did is now known as trust and safety in the industry. And it was really interesting to see that this thing that was not a thing become its own kind of function and have its own career path, and just really see that evolve. It was also a time when I got married and had kids, and it was challenging to be on teams with mostly non-parents, but I think that it gave me a lot of empathy for people and it made me a better leader. I think that being a mother and kind of everybody seeing that you're a little bit different than everybody else really made you more approachable and really help you cultivate talent that's on your team. So it eventually became an asset, though it was really hard, of course, to be a working parent like we all know. After a decade at Google, I decided that I just really wanted to test my abilities. I'd gotten really good at legal and policy and operations and strategy, but I wanted to see, could I do this in a different environment, a more challenging one? And I really was drawn to engineering and working in enterprise software. So I joined Box. And I joined Box to start a totally new function called Engineering Strategy and Operations. And so over the last 4 years, I've been at Box, and I was able to kind of lean on everything I had learned at Google, and also build new skills. I got to work with engineers to define our strategy, run teams, and build business operations to deliver on that strategy, and really learn what it meant to serve customers at a higher enterprise bar. And I found that so exciting because it really took my skills to the next level. And essentially, I started what the industry calls strategy and operations function in engineering at Box. And that was also very exciting to start something new. So if you look at my experiences, they were varied. I didn't take an obvious path, and I think I really benefited from being weird or having just a multitude of experiences and a multitude of skills, particularly during a time when tech was changing and it wasn't clear what we needed to do. People just needed to solve problems. And I see myself spending the second half of my life doing something totally new and different as well. So while all the things I did seemed disparate, they always came together so that I could see the world in more interesting ways and contribute from that perspective. The integration of all my different skills also created new functions. And I think my career trajectory was very unexpected and ever-changing, but it's just like the evolution of human history and technology. So let's take a quick look at the first, second, and third, and fourth industrial revolution. What you'll see is that the people who define the new worlds are the ones who are totally weird. They see connections between disciplines, industries, and functions that didn't exist before, and they make a new world. If I look at just my own lifetime, look at all the functions that have emerged just because technology has just evolved. And I think that that's pretty exciting. I'm sure that's a very short list. And I also wanted to look at one example in history we all know, which is Ada Lovelace. She was, as you know, the first programmer. And Ada challenged the assumption that calculators can only calculate, right? She wrote an algorithm to have calculators do more. And she actually called her work poetical science because she always integrated poetry with her science. She thought that poetry and science together challenged our assumptions about how the world works. She also studied math and metaphysics is basically abstract philosophy. And she considered the two of them two really important tools to explore what she called the unseen world around us. So what that shows me is that if you ever feel lost in space and just wandering, untethered like I felt as a young adult, I would say, you know what, consider that none of us are actually lost at all. Perhaps we're on our way to discover the unseen worlds around us in an ever-expanding universe. Thanks. And with that, I'm going to pass the baton to my former colleague at Google, Sharon.
Hello. Hi, thanks, Peipei. Your talk was so awesome. I don't have any slides because I don't like to make slides. So, Peipei, that was just so beautiful. Thank you so much for your story. My story is, here's the story of how I got out of my comfort zone in the corporate world to become an entrepreneur and president of my own company, Sage Digital Marketing. What am I on this planet to do, and what is the purpose of my life? Is this the career for me? I wonder if any of you have those same questions. Since I couldn't come up with a great answer, I decided to not make any changes in my career and stay at Google. Like Peipei, I joined in 2006, and I just figured that since I couldn't answer the big question, what's the purpose of my life, the prudent thing to do was just stay put, keep this great job, save money, and one day the answer would strike me like lightning. But the years passed, 13 years passed by. All the while, I did learn a lot of business skills, but I couldn't get closer to the answers I was seeking. What I learned is that while those are good questions, the answers were too daunting and they were preventing me from ever moving forward. So at the ripe age of 36, I began to ask myself new questions. The energy that flowed from those new questions was awesome. So the questions were, how have I invested in myself? How have I remade myself? How much would I invest in order to learn and grow in my career? My friends all got MBAs. How much did they spend on those degrees? And should I invest that same amount in myself to start my own company? How many months does it take for a business to take off? Can I afford it, and am I worth it? At first, the answer was very quiet, but now it is loud. Yes, yes, I am worth the investment. For those of you who are like me and need concrete numbers, here's what I settled on. And later I'll tell you, it's important to have concrete answers sometimes. So I decided that I will invest 24 months of my life to start an ad agency. I also decided that I would invest $100,000 in myself over those 2 years to cover living costs until I became profitable, because I am worth it. So I launched Sage Digital Marketing with a friend of mine, also an ex-Googler who had been freelancing and advertising. It was a very good thing that I had those solid answers and a healthy sense of confidence. I thought we would be wading into a gentle sea of entrepreneurship. But let me tell you, entrepreneurship is not a warm Mediterranean bath. It is a powerful, cold Pacific awakening, and the sea will teach you humility quickly. It will test your limits of business acumen right away. So here are 2 lessons I learned in the first year. First of all, my business friend, the one I told you about, my co-founder, she wanted to have a casual business. She likes freelancing, but I want to be a millionaire. So those were very divergent paths. She left the company and she left me. I felt like Tom Hanks in Castaway when his little volleyball friend Wilson floated away from his life raft. I felt utter loss. Wilson! But my only friend in the sea was gone. The sea felt immense, and that was very hard and hurtful. But I pressed on because that was only in month 9. I had 15 months more to go in this experiment. I felt like a massive failure, and I wanted to go back to Google and drink their free coffee. But here's what I learned from that experience. I learned 50-50 partnerships are extremely hard. For me, I learned I'll never have another 50% partnership. Stocks, ownership, board formation, CEOs, those are complex concepts. And the time to start learning about those is now. James Dyson owns 100% of Dyson vacuums, so I know it is possible. In the end, Wilson would not help Tom Hanks stay afloat in the vast sea. He had to learn to swim on his own. Today, I own 100% of Sage Digital Marketing stocks, and I hope to keep it that way. Here's the second lesson I learned at sea. The first client I ever signed on a long-term contract negotiated my price down. I let him negotiate my value down, but at that time, I had no real steady business, and I felt that I needed the business. And it didn't feel good to hear a man tell me I wasn't worth the amount that I thought. But listen to me now, it's not just men who do this. Women do it too. We do it to each other. We cheapen each other. Why? Recently, a female executive reacted to my pricing. She said, "Oh, but your competitors are offering a cheaper price." Over time, the price thing kept coming up. And what I learned was that I had to teach my customers explicitly about my value, and I wasn't doing it well. Why is advertising extremely complex and hard to do right? What economic opportunity did I bring to them? And what are the risks in losing that opportunity when partnering with someone who isn't that good? Maybe cheaper. I changed my whole pitch to open with a slide all about my customers' competitors. What did I see their competitors doing very well, and what would I do to beat them? It's not easy to look someone in the eye and say, I am the best, but we have to do it. So what did I say to the person who said, your competitors are offering a cheaper price? I swallowed hard. Remembering the pain of that cheaper first contract, I swallowed real hard and I dug deep. And I answered, well, I don't consider them to be my competitors at all. In fact, I've never even heard of them. I come from 13 odd years at Google. I've done this thousands of times and I don't fail. Here is the data that proves I create lasting economic value for my customers. We're the best at what we do. It's okay if you can't afford the best, but the price is the price. 12 hours later, she signed the contract. So I'll leave you with this story. 7 weeks ago, if we can remember back to life before this, 7 weeks ago, my sister, her sushi restaurant, her sales fell by 60% overnight because of shelter in place. After having had the restaurant for 19 years, she was going to close the business. I began running ads for her, and I became totally obsessed with Facebook ads. I ran 6 creatives all at the same time. And March turned into April. By the 5th week, we regained all lost revenue because of those ads. I was thrilled to hear my sister report back that we made more profit than before shelter in place by a whole $7. I was elated. I was able to keep her business not just surviving, but thriving. This story comes full circle to those earlier questions that I struggled with. What am I on this planet to do? What is the purpose of my life? Listen carefully. I can hear the answers now. Thank you.
All right. Hello. We're going to start Q&A in a moment. So I'm gonna take a moment to look at what's in the Q&A tab. So if you have questions, feel free to add them down below. And it's easier if you put them in the QA tab specifically than in the chat one, although someone will help me if they end up there. I'm recovering. That got me all verklempt, by the way, Sharon. I was like, yes, go. Okay. So starting with the first question I see, how do you ask a boss coworker for resources, funding, or support without making it look like a favor for which I'd always remain indebted, especially being a woman with a male boss coworker? Anita, I feel like you talked a little bit about this in the beginning about growing confidence. Do you have thoughts on this one?
Yeah, the way to ask for resources or having the courage to go and ask your male boss is, it all goes back to the value and your relationship with the person. On if they know you well, then and you can let them know that what your ideas are and how you want to and why you need these resources and what the end result or the value would be to the business. They would be open to listening to that idea. And relationship plays a very important role in that, relationship and trust. And any organization or the group I went to, that's one of the things that I work on, building the relationships and trust so that people get to know you, and then they will come and support you when you ask for help, resources, or they might even provide introductions for you.
Nice. Next question was specifically called out for you, Kavita. Kavita, you mentioned some newer software platforms that allow women to develop their mentoring network. Can you elaborate on this? How do you get your manager and HR team to leverage such peer coaching platforms and networking platforms for growing your career? Can you talk a little bit about your experience in getting your HR teams to consider different approaches to structuring networking and coaching?
Sure. Thank you, Alana, for the question. And first of all, I would like to say that, mentoring and coaching is extremely important for growth, and both in personal and professional lives. So there are multiple ways that you can do it. There is one-on-one coaching sessions that you could leverage with, anyone that is in your network and also outside of your network. There are actually platforms today and out there where all of these can get integrated. So some work of coaching and networking can happen within platforms, and Numbly is like one of the integrators, a platform that actually can enable you to go and take coaching both within your organization as well as outside your organization. In terms of like how you can get coached, seek out to your friends, seek out to your people you work with, and also outside of your network connections, I think matter a lot. There are also LinkedIn Learning, and there's platforms like Smart Habit where there's a lot of focus on coaching itself. How do you actually get to speak to your HR and your manager to invest in you and your growth and your team's growth? There's a lot of team building budget as well as team morale budget, which people can leverage, and you can go and talk and actually get that money to be invested in your growth. I feel that investing in oneself in terms of mentoring and coaching is not just good, but it's essential. So yes, there are a lot of platforms that you can go out and leverage. So hopefully that answers. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm going to make sure we get through the questions before I have other folks add on. This is not a question, but I think it might be worth having Meriem add a bit more on this. So it says, sometimes when I let go, I have to think if I'm escaping or not strong enough to stand up for yourself. This usually happens to females. So Meriem, can you add a little bit on that? Like, because I definitely hear, having interviewed women for my book, that it is difficult to decide like when to fight, when to decide okay, I should go, I can't fight for everyone. So a little bit of like, how have you thought through this, and how would you suggest others think it through?
Yeah, and just to echo the caveat I shared at the beginning, the person who shared this insight, it is really hard. It's really hard to do. And one of the things that has helped me is kind of going back to that self-love. For me, that's also understanding my worth and my values. And obviously not enough time to get into it in less than 7 minutes, but start thinking about, if you haven't already, what your values are and what you do believe in. And these are things that change and evolve over time. So maybe it's a yearly process of writing down your list of 10 or so values. The first time someone asked me this, I was kind of taken aback and really uncomfortable because I hadn't consciously thought about it. And I felt this shame about not having thought about my values. But this is something that I now do on a yearly basis. For example, just this year, I added fun as one of my values. This is something I really care about. And I think having that perspective can really help whenever you are in an environment that is putting you down or around people that are putting you down, to make it very clear when that is happening and then give you space to exit. And I just wanted to say again, because this person noted that it happens to women, and that's true. I think there's this fallacy that we should just keep going through everything and just keep going and pushing and pushing. And sometimes it's actually so much more effective to look at another environment and think, oh, that's a space where I can actually thrive and do really good work. And so it's important to kind of shift that perspective and not think of it as failure, but just think of it as a reorientation, or a space where people can really see your gifts and where it's an environment that you can thrive and have and grow.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think understanding your values and how much it's coming to you as a personal cost will help you navigate kind of when enough is enough. And I do think that as women, we have this pressure, sometimes very unconsciously, to stay for the group and to do more for the group, and to not do things for us as individuals. And that can kind of help you navigate when you've done enough for the group. Yeah. Is it possible to get the slides of the speakers? I believe we will be sharing those. So I'm just going to say yes. Does she ship? Oh, hey, Sharon, does your sister ship sushi?
Sushi doesn't ship well. Don't mail order sushi. Thank you so much. But the community has been wonderful at this time. Thank you.
Peipei, I'm very curious to learn how you managed to pivot your career successfully so many times.
Well, I think there's probably two big things that are probably really important. I think one of them is you have to show people you can deliver results. I think at the end of the day, people need problem solved. They need things done. And so I would say, and that's why I always say, like, collect as many skills as possible. Collect skills, use those skills to solve problem and deliver results. At the end of the day, I actually think probably in tech, people are less interested in exactly the thing you want to label yourself as, right? But that you can accomplish things and get teams to the destination that, that the company wants the teams to get to. So that's one, show that you're very capable and you can get things done. And then I think secondly, it's really about having people vouch for you. If I look at all the jobs I've had, it's usually somebody who has seen what I can do and kind of can vouch that, hey, for example, when I was at Google, I was not somebody who would call myself a technologist. I certainly didn't think, I would work in corporate America, as I said, but I had worked with this person at the National Women's Political Caucus. And I think she could kind of vouch like, hey, this is somebody who can learn, this is somebody who can do things. And I think it's similar at Box. I had one of my friends had his company purchased by Box, and he and I knew each other from college. And he kind of knew that I was somebody who can get things done. And so again, while I was not an engineer, certainly that was somebody who can kind of make the case for you that you're somebody who is worth kind of taking a risk on. And so for me, I think it's important to continue to do things learn those skills. Even volunteering, I think, is an excellent way to change industries, because when you volunteer in that sector, for example, you meet people, and then people can kind of see what you can do, and they'll be more willing to take a risk on you.
Awesome. We're running slightly over, but there's one more official question, which I feel like relates. So I'm going to have Jennifer answer, how do I find my juice, Jennifer? Which I think actually you had to help me find. So this is almost as if I'm really asking it to you.
It's funny because I know the person who was asking this question. Side, Natalie, I see you. Yeah, so kind of to dovetail off of everyone actually that has answered. Peipei, by the way, that was incredible. Thank you for that. And Meriem before, was talking about your values, and I really think it does, start there, right? I mentioned the UVP, which is your unique value proposition. But if you start there as your epicenter from which to build, how you want to drive your life, I really think that's how you cultivate your juice in a big bad way. So yeah, that's what I would say. That's how I'd answer that. Thank you, Natalie, for your question.
Awesome. Well, I think we are beyond time. So I just want to thank all the speakers today. Those were beautiful, and based on the comments I'm seeing, I can tell you inspired lots of people. I will take another look to make sure we answered these questions, because I'm scanning rather quickly. If we missed anything, I'm sure we can make sure that we follow up. And thank you for coming today. And thank you for such the positive feedback and support as we've been presenting on the webinar chat. It's been lovely. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks and bye.